And bam, just like that. It's like magic. It's like wizardry. We are live. I'm live with Bryan Stone. How you doing tonight, man?
Clint, doing well. Looks like you've been busy today. You've been doing this a lot.
Well, I actually thought about this, and you come from a radio background, and you have a podcast as well. And some days I try to do interviews or get guests when it's convenient for them. And so there'll be sometimes I'll have a couple days with nobody, and then everybody said yes to today. Everybody on planet Earth that I sent an invitation to was like, absolutely. What time's available?
Yeah, all the old
like,
radio ranch people.
Absolutely, yeah. And I had a good interview with like Eric Buchanan and John Ballinger, and man, it's good stuff. But I'm starting to appreciate what guys like you and Styles and Chase and all these other people really do for a living, and that's be on the radio a lot. It's mentally draining.
It really is more difficult than certainly the Jeff Styles of the world, which there aren't many of him, but he makes it look as easy as anything ever. I've been told I do as well. Because it's like anything else in life. When you get good at something, it looks like it's not that difficult for you. But
yeah,
it is, and it is mentally stressful. When I used to, on the talk side, the music stuff, that's easy. I mean, I can do that in my sleep. The talk stuff, when I used to fill in for Jeff, and that would be for like 20 hours a week, for when he'd be gone for a week, I was out of my mind stressed out every day. And once I got going, I settled down and everything's fine. And I still knew what I was doing, but it was like every minute of my day was just consumed with, oh my God, what am I going to do tomorrow? And Jeff does that every day for 30 years. So,
yeah. Well, and we talked. He and I had this because I had him on earlier tonight, this evening, and we talked a little bit about that. Even if you have a great co-host, and when he had you with him, even if there's dead air, eventually people look to you. I mean, as a co-host, I can kind of mail it in if I have to, because nobody's going to get mad at Clint Powell, the guy that's the third guy in the chair.
yeah,
They're going to look to Jeff Styles or look to you real quick and go, man, what are you talking about? Why was there dead air? Why were you asleep? What the hell's going on?
Whoever's driving it or running point, as they would say, it's all on you, no matter what happens. And that's a real stressful place to be the third wheel, or to be the second guy, the executive producer who gets, airtime and show contributes. That's pretty easy once you know what you're doing, but always being the guy driving the conversation, that's some tough stuff.
Do you like podcasting? Have you found it? Because I know you radio for a long time. Was it an easy transition? Was it something that came natural to you? And do you like it?
Pretty much no to all those questions. The answer is no. It didn't come very easy, and to be honest with you, I don't really like it because it's not what I love, which is radio. And it took me a while to figure that out. At first, I just thought, okay, well, this is just a recorded radio show, which in some theory, I guess it is. But it's just really not. I mean, doing an hour of live, and when I talk radio, I mean, I'm talking the spoken word format. I've fallen out of love with the music format forever ago. Spoken word, talk, storytelling, that's the kind of stuff that I listen to every day of my life, and I enjoy that the most. So when I say radio, that's what I mean. But you got to treat your audience different in podcasting, because it's just a different audience. These people chose to be here. And you address who's listening differently. I don't know how to explain it real eloquently here, but it's just not like going to breaks and having teases and in radio you need to be repetitive, almost being annoyingly repetitive.
Yeah.
And in podcasting, if you're even repetitive a little bit, that's just as annoying as it gets. So they're two very different things. The only thing they share in common, which is a pretty big thing, but is people listen to it. Outside of that, they're not even kind of the same thing. And I miss live, bullets flying, no net radio. I love that. I get adrenaline from that. Podcasting is a chore. I got to sit down.
See, I am surprised, man, because you're a storyteller And I think people are attracted to podcasts that are centered around storytelling. And I'll use Jeff Styles as an example. When he first started trying to do podcasting, I remember I was trying to help him a little bit. And I was telling him, and he came to the realization himself, but he had all this time on the radio to talk about daily topics. If he wants to talk about COVID, he can talk about COVID. If he wants to talk about Trump, he can talk about Trump, whatever's on the news.
Mm-hmm.
But then he would try to do his podcast, which was always late. And you know this about radio. If you're listening to yesterday's radio program on talk, it's old news. It's gone. That news cycle is history.
No reason to even listen to it.
And that's what was frustrating him. So he morphed his podcast into telling stories and about music, which I think you and him share a lot of the same interest. And he found a niche now. He just sits back and tells short stories.
Yeah.
And I actually thought that I kind of pictured you in that same vein. So the fact that you find it like a chore, it surprises me.
No, me and Jeff are different that way. We're similar in a lot of ways. I mean, I've worked underneath him and wanted to emulate him most of the time when I was young, but he doesn't really like radio. Like radio, it's just a job to him that he's good at. He likes to tell stories. And so when he started doing the podcast and I started listening to him early on, I thought immediately, man, these are good because this is natural for Jeff. I like to talk about the topics of the day. And that's why I like to tell stories too. I just don't have as enriched life and as full of amazing things to talk about it like Jeff.
Well, hold on one second. Let me paraphrase. You've not done as much dumb shit as Jeff has. Continue on, sir.
Well, he's got 20 years on me, so I got time. But no, he leads in that department certainly.
He's a good dude.
But yeah, but he's made for a storytelling podcast, and a radio clock just pisses him off. Like he doesn't want to stop at 20, even if he doesn't really want to keep going. He just wants to buck the system anyway. I like the clock. I like, hey, we get in at 5, we're out at 15, we're back at 32. Get your shit together here. Have the sounds and actualities ready over here. And the pressure of trying to do it all on time and do it flawlessly, I thrive on. It's stressful, but I thrive on it. And there's none of that in podcasting. But when I get
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said, when I get done with the show, with the things that I put out there for people to consume, I'm very proud of. Like I'm very proud of them, and I'm very pleased with my work. I just don't enjoy it like I was thrilled when doing a radio show. Podcast is Tuesday night. Damn it, got to do the podcast.
Yeah. Well, and see, Jeff is such a good storyteller, and I think you nailed it. I think he enjoys eating the meal. He's the main dish, and he likes that, and he's great. He's, like I said, probably the best storyteller I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You like the process. You get the adrenaline off of the process of making it happen. So I think I've never thought about it that way, but I can see that. I can see you kind of the adrenaline pump of, if I don't hit this the right time, it goes to heck in a handbasket.
Yeah. From every angle, from a producer angle, no matter what the role is, I've done pretty much any of it. I'm not great at all of it, but I'm pretty good at most of it. So whatever role I've got, I take real seriously, and I really, it's in my blood. It's one of those, radio is just my thing. I've always loved it since I was 18, 19 years old, and I've been doing it on a part-time hobby basis, getting paid a little bit for 20 years.
A quick shout out. We've got Rebecca. But speaking of the Styles, Rebecca Cruz Styles said Bryan Stone with a bunch of emojis, which I guess she's saying you're a cool guy, and hello.
Thank you, Rebecca. We didn't mention this on the front end. I can't see you or any of these things, so everybody can see me, I guess, I'm told. So hello.
You're there. Well, that's the other thing. And I've got a couple shout outs because people private messaged me when they knew I was going to have you on.
Sure.
Have you thought of doing your own daily, like a YouTube or Facebook, where you can control like a live thing where it's just you doing your thing?
I have, but even doing this with you right now, there's something about talking into my phone that is difficult for me. I don't know if it's just because of the selfie culture and the people who just broadcast their lives, who've got nothing to show from age, 12 to 75 years old. There's something about it that just turns me off. And so I haven't been quick to want to do that, but it's something that's necessary for the, going forward. And I probably will at some point, but this is the first time I've done anything like this. would
I
talk.
think it would scratch your itch because you can do it on your laptop once you get it set up. I've got a nice microphone, and I think you could actually have somewhat of your elements around you, and you could have a clock. You get sponsors. You can self-impose some timelines. I could see that every day I think people would tune in to hear your stuff, and you could have guests on too.
Yeah, I mean, especially once March hit and COVID and all that. I just started the second podcast, the Project 423, which was going to be a local live music centric show. Not always music, but mostly, because my podcast has gone away from any of that. It's just my commentary for the week. It used to be, I wanted it to be more of a guest based thing, like it used to be over at Talk Radio, but it just didn't work out. And I like having my hour of just, here's me for an hour once a week. And so I thought it'd be a good way to maybe even eventually, if there ever is revenue in this, supposedly for-profit venture, that would be a good another angle to have, like a once a month podcast. And the very first one we did was the quarantine show at Songbirds, Strung Like a Horse, and we haven't had a live show since. So,
and Songbirds is gone.
And then, yes, of course, the heartbreaking news in the last day and a half, 2 days that Songbirds is gone. And I'm not that surprised I know some of those guys, they didn't say anything to me, but there's a lot of overhead in that place. And it's going to be, that's going to be a big hole for the music scene for sure.
All right, let me read a couple of these comments. Rebecca said, I still miss Bryan Stone and El Jefe being on together. Best ever. Ron Hall said, Jeff and Bryan are great together. What's up, Ron? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
For tuning in. Real quick before we move on, how do people find? I know you're on Facebook. If they can log into your Facebook and check it out. But if they're on podcast platforms, can they just? How do they find your stuff?
Luckily, it's all worked out. Pretty much anywhere you're searching anything, anywhere, StoneOnAir, all one word, will get you anything that's out there.
Cool.
Like podcast search engines, Google. If it's StoneOnAir in with separated words, you get some kind of something from the Middle East, some kind of, I don't know, temple or something. But if it's all one word, if you want to find it, and I've done it, it's there.
One thing, the only thing, and I don't think you saw it, but we have a mutual friend. He said the only thing we can't talk about tonight is baseball. Jeremy Mahoney.
I was already trying to figure out how I was going to work in the baseball joke for Jeremy. We don't need to talk baseball, Jeremy. You're safe here. It's a safe place.
I don't know. I like making fun of Jeremy. I played rugby with him for a while, so I like to make fun of him a little bit.
I love making fun of him. He tells wrestling's the greatest thing ever, but baseball's the dumbest. What are we doing here?
Well, that's just because usually, you know what that means, though. That means you can't play it worth crap.
Yeah, you can't play
it. He was the guy they would always say, okay, after we get through batting, Jeremy, you run and pick up all the balls.
I guarantee you that was the case.
Yeah, and I say that now because he's not near me and he can't twist me into a pretzel, so it doesn't.
Oh yeah, matter. He could karate chop me right down to the floor in 5 seconds.
It doesn't matter. All right, so let's see. We talked about that. We talked about some radio. Do you listen to podcasts? Because I know you say you don't. It's a chore to you, but do you consume podcasts?
Not really.
You're killing me. That's crazy. No, I didn't know that.
No. I people are always surprised at a couple of these different answers I've given you. I listen to Tony Kornheiser almost every day, but he does the same thing I do. A radio show is a podcast. So it's just a Tony Kornheiser show. It just happens to be a podcast. So I don't count that. I have listened to a few and I've been really impressed by a lot of them. But only sporadically. And the main reason is that I listen to the radio. Radio's on everywhere I go. It's in my garage, in my bathroom, in my car, at my work. I've always got radio going. It's just kind of that thing that accompanies me every day. And it's designed that way. That's part of what I love about it. You can come and go. You don't have to be there. To me, a podcast is a major commitment. And it's just like, I can't sit down at work. I have a desk job, that's my day job, and I listen to a podcast because I'm focusing on other things. I can't watch a television show and do paperwork over here, right? I mean, like a good show anyway. You want to sit down and zero in and watch the show.
Right.
To me, that's the same thing with a podcast. Maybe it's my attention span. I don't know. But I have to sit down and just focus on listening to this podcast. And I don't ever have an hour just to sit there and focus on just 1 hour of it, usually. Unless I'm traveling, I listen to them when I travel. If I'm cutting the grass, I'll find something to listen to for an hour. But outside of that, it's radio all the time. I get NPR on half the day. I even GOW occasionally, even I don't like to give them a lot of credit, but that those wounds have healed. So yeah, no, not really. Malcolm Gladwell is one guy who does podcasts who I really like. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
I'm not. No.
He's like a super intellectual type. He's probably pushing 50. Used to work for the Washington Post. It's hard to explain, but it's fascinating stuff. But you got to really, really, really focus. So anyway, that's about as far as it goes. But no, not really, not much.
I've listened to a couple of podcasts. I listen to Joe Rogan quite a bit, and for the most part, I can listen to him just and not. I can focus, but it's kind of background if I want it to be. But sometimes he'll have guests on that I'm really interested in, and his are 3-hour conversations.
That's
and
insane.
Literally, it takes me 2 days to consume them. I'll listen 30 minutes here, 15 minutes there.
That's insane to me. I watch, I've seen a lot of his stuff on YouTube and stuff. I've never really listened like to his podcast straight through or anything. He's obviously the king of the industry, and he's good at what he does. Part of why I haven't given him much of a fair shake is everything he used to be involved in. I don't like at all. I don't like UFC. I hated the Man Show too. And what Fear Factor? I think he was.
Yes, he was Fear Factor.
All three of those I despise. So I kind of had this built-in I hate Joe Rogan thing. And then I realized, okay, this guy's actually really smart and really good interviewer. Yeah, really good interviewer.
So you don't like the UFC?
No.
You like boxing? Are you traditional boxer?
I think it's barbaric. And I grew up at the tail end of boxing, the Mike Tyson hysteria. And right. So everybody at that time who was older than me, parents, boxing was, a big deal for a long time. And so it got ingrained in me that boxing was a really important, special sport. And I don't know, it's obviously fallen off now and nobody watches it anymore, but it's a very technical sport. It's not just beating the hell out of each other until someone's bleeding all over the place. So I never really, it's not for me.
I didn't like the Man Show too because it was a ripoff and it was just terrible. And the second, the runaround, the remake of it just wasn't great. I didn't mind Fear Factor at first, but when they started eating like horse penises and
shit,
yeah, no, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm done.
But yeah, Rogan, he is really good at interviewing, and that's the one thing that I'm fascinated by. Jeff. Here locally, Howard Stern obviously is the king of it. Joe's great. So many are good at interviewing. You're good at interviewing. I'm not very good at it. I have a very little experience interviewing people. I've got a ton of experience, on being on the air, but don't interview very many people. And I get real nervous when I set it up, and I just don't. And so when I see somebody who does it well, I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, but I think it's like practice. You could probably you're a great storyteller, and I think that would segue over nicely into. I think that's why people like you and Jeff together is because you had two storytellers, one that was the driver and the other knew when to contribute. And then if Jeff was ever had a moment where he wasn't on it or didn't have it, it was a great combination. It was a good mix of personality, and that's hard to find.
The problem with doing random interviews is that if you don't have somebody who is really engaging, you really got to work hard to make that work. And that's just not my strong point. Jeff's great at that. He can keep it together and beat it out of you without anybody even realizing he's doing it. I clam up and start kind of dominating the conversation. And the next thing you know, it's like, hey, you going to let them talk, dude? Like, well, it doesn't feel like they're saying anything. When in actuality they might be, and I'm just kind of cornering them. So I don't know. Again, it just comes down to experience, and I haven't had a lot of. Hell, I haven't done live radio in 4 years. So
really, has it been that long?
Not live radio. I just left Bayhackle doing the music station Alt 98.7 at the COVID hitting. They did some budget cuts that I got let go there, but that wasn't live either. That was all voice track. So
wow,
everything you've heard on the radio of me for 4 years has been recorded, and all the podcasts have been recorded. So I haven't done a live radio show since June 24th, 2016.
I'm telling you right now, and I know you'll figure it out, but I would dare say you get this live thing down, it would scratch that itch for you so good, it would kill it. I didn't know this. Do you play instruments? Are you a musician?
I play guitar.
I saw a picture of you, and I had no idea that, and I did know, but I didn't know you were a guitar player.
I used to be in a couple of pretty decent bands at the end of the first decade of the century, and that was I didn't ever talk about it much because I didn't want anybody to think when I was first getting into the radio business that they just thought I was just another idiot in a band that was just trying to get their band exposure. And so I never really talked about it. I didn't keep it a secret, but I didn't want it to come across because that's like that happens all the time. Hey, I'm in a local band. I want to get on the radio. So, and I didn't want to get thought of as anything other than a radio guy. Plus, I'm not very good.
What kind of music did you play? What kind of music did you play?
Americana, blues, bass, jam, rock and roll, that kind of stuff. And I just played rhythm and did some singing. I know I know a lot of good musicians, but my closest guy that I'd play with was just an insanely good lead guitar player. And so we would just jam out, and I can play with anybody, but I can't do anything that's going to wow you. And so I kind of hit a wall with learning to play music around the age of 25 because I stopped just learning. I was just playing. I mean, I never was getting better. And then I was focusing most of my time to radio at that point, and I just got bored with it. And I haven't strummed a guitar in half decade at least. Haven't played one with anybody in almost a decade.
So let me ask you this, and then we'll give me about another 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. How do you pick your topics when you do your podcast? Is it whatever on your mind that day, or do you actually schedule it out? Because I just noticed you did one about the liquor store, package store here in East Ridge. I don't know how recent that was, but it had to be in the last few weeks. Yeah,
that was this week. That's another thing that I don't like about it that I miss with radio is that I'll start to work on my let me back up. Scott Chase a long time ago said to me when I first started working at KZ, and I was just marveled by Jeff. I mean, I've been listening to Jeff since I was 19. And I said, and I was like, man, he just comes in here and does it. He doesn't do any show prep. And Scott was like, man, his whole life is his show prep. And that never left me. I was like, that's interesting. And I've kind of, for that in the next 15, 18 years, modeled myself the same way. Try to live an interesting life and be observant of everything around you. And that'll create your content for you. And it sure enough does. So leading every week, you should see my notes to self on my phone. Every month, there's hundreds of them. Just something I see, something I think about, something that, I hear somewhere. And then as the week gets closer to the time I'm going to record, I just sift through those and see which one applies the most to whatever's going on that week. And then put together 3 segments and boom, an hour of podcast. But the problem there is that I start often maybe into the weekend. I record every Tuesday. Well, by the time Tuesday rolls around, there might be 10 more things I'd rather do than the stuff I already started on. And that frustrates me because I do a lot of pre-production stuff with audio and things like that. And that's another thing that irritates me, but that's a long way of answering your question. That's how I come up with topics. It's just kind of whatever puts together over the course of a week. And sometimes Sunday will roll around. I'll be like, geez, I got nothing. And then lo and behold, every time, boom, something shows up.
Well, now the news cycle we're in, that's a 15-minute news cycle. Yeah. You're guaranteed to have, and everything's the biggest election ever. It's the biggest, Trump said the dumbest thing. Now the Democrats said the dumbest thing. Everything's the biggest and baddest ever.
Well, and my goal too is to stay. It always probably would be this way a little bit anyway, but certainly now. The news of the day of politics is just that's not my thing. Like I'm not going to talk about that stuff because I don't find it interesting. I don't find it interesting when other people do it, and I don't find it interesting when I'm doing it. Now I don't ignore the news cycle, and I don't ignore something that really needs to be at least mentioned. But as far as the podcast goes, the words Trump or Biden hadn't been mentioned in 6 months.
But one of the reasons I don't do a lot of it, I do it sometimes. I'm actually starting a series with 2 businessmen. We're going to invite different people that disagree. It's going to be good conversation, but it's about history. It has nothing to do about really a lot going on now. But if people want to find politics and analysis, what's going on today, there's a million better places than Clint Powell right now that you can go get smart people talking about that shit.
Yeah, I mean, and you can. That's the good thing about podcasting is that you can narrowcast it, and if you want that, you can go get that. That's available. I often my show is hard to categorize, and people are sometimes think it's a really cool thing. Sometimes like, what do you mean? Like, what's your podcast about? My podcast is about whatever I want, whatever I want. Like, it's just kind of like whatever's going on that week. And in my life, talking politics is not a thing. I don't do it. And so on my show, I'm not going to do it either. Now, if I had a radio show every day, I would, because it would be irresponsible to have a show every day where you didn't talk about what the headline was then. At least mention it, right? But
I think people are seeking that stuff out too. I think they're seeking a break from it out. The negativity of social media and everything. I think they're looking for stuff like what you're doing.
Yeah, but I listen to anything I do and walk away. I wonder what he thinks about a certain topic. Like, I'm not going to stay away from where just my mannerisms and the way of inflection of my voice can tell you what I think about something. But I'm not going to sit here and say, all right, let's talk about how terrible Trump is for 30 minutes, or let's talk about how much I love President Obama. Like, that's just not good content. That's boring. So I try to sometimes historically put things in perspective, maybe based on whatever the story is. I often, if I find somebody on a talking head show, or I find some good audio that brings a different element, so where I'm not really doing an interview, but I'm bringing somebody else's voice in, I'll do stuff like that might have a little political slant.
Are you glad?
Not much.
Are you glad Top Golf came to East Ridge?
I am glad that Top Golf came to East Ridge. I'm a little confused as to what it's going to be exactly, because it's not the Top Golf that I'm used to, and I've never been to one, but I've seen them all over online and heard they're like amazing. This looks like this is a kind of a light version, but I'll take anything. I mean, that side of town is a long ways away from me. I'm on the east side by the tunnels. That's all the way down by the interstate, but bring on a Champies, bring on a Chick-fil-A now. Bring on there's a new place.
It'll come down towards you. It'll come down towards you. There's a Jonathan's is coming here.
Yeah, too. Jonathan seems like the blandest name you could come up with, but apparently it's a really cool chain sport or casual dining sports bar. I'm all about it. Red Wolves. I mean, I'm a CFC guy all day, every day, but I want the Red Wolves to kill it. They're here in East Ridge. I want them to do well. I'm rooting for them. So yeah, I've transformed into an East Ridge guy for sure.
Welcome, sir. Us old folks will welcome you with open arms.
It's a good little community, man. It's got good city services, recycle pickup. Never had any trouble with garbage or brush pickup. The little I pay attention to, the tax structure seems to be all right. I'm sure the mayor and the council members are probably all the same as most mayors and council members, but overall, I'm pretty happy with just about everything about this area, except for it's a little downtrodden in some places, but I mean you can get that anywhere in middle class America.
It'll come back around. Where are you from originally? And we'll wrap this one up. Where are you from originally, man?
I was born in just outside of San Diego, Oceanside, California, in 1980. We moved here in 1986. So I've effectively been here my whole life, but just the vaguest recollection of being, a Southern California kid. And I always wonder, it's just one of the more things I think about, like, what would it be like if I lived right down by the beach till I was
would you be a beach bum?
Would I be a beach? I don't know. Would I be a surfer? Would I be a bro talker? California, the Californians, would I be that? I do not know. But I love the South, and I get more redneck by the year, and in a good way. And I love being here, and there's nowhere else I'd rather live. Certainly not the little experience I have in the Northeast, the Midwest. Haven't been out west a bunch. I've been out there enough to know that, Colorado is about as cool of a state you're going to be in, but I'm happy right here.
Quick shout out. Jen Lambert said, thanks so much for the great content.
Hey, Jen.
Bryan, you're fun. Yeah, you're fun to listen to and love Stone on Air. So let's wrap it up with that. Tell everybody one more time, because it's been about halfway through the show. We said it. If people go and they Google podcast, all they have to do is Google Stone on Air with no spaces, correct?
Yeah, all one word, Stone on Air, all social medias, Stone on Air, Google, podcast search engines. It'll get you everything that's ever been recorded, and most everything I've done for the last, even when I was still doing radio stuff for the last 5, 6, 7 years, is all archived somewhere. Not that anybody would want to go back and listen to that stuff, but if you did, it's there.
Well, I'll encourage you this, man. I love to hear you tell stories. I love the podcast. You got a great radio voice and demeanor. So if you can find a way to make this where it's not so much a chore and do a daily thing or a live thing, I think you'd have a lot of support for it down the road, man.
I will certainly, I have thought about it before, and I appreciate the encouragement, and I am a little behind by not doing that. And I do recognize that. And yeah, maybe that will be down the road.
But you're the guy, though. You're the kind of guy. If you don't find a way to scratch that itch, you're going to get it's not going to fulfill you as a person. I can tell you like radio and you like this enough.
Well, I'll tell you this, though. The only reason I might not do the exact same things you're talking about right now, and speaking of Jen, I've got a lead on something where I might have a gig here soon. You can probably take your guesses as to where you think that might be, and made more on that here in the near future.
That is killer.
Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing that. And then if that does happen in a magical world, I'll tune in.
It's not close enough to done to say it yet, but it's done.
Good for you. Good for you. Good for everybody. And if you get more comfortable with this down the road, we'll try to find a way where you can see me and it's more of a conversation instead of you guessing when I'm done talking.
Hey, yeah, it's all good, man. This is fun. I love this stuff. Anytime.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks, Bryan Stone.
Thanks, Clint.
See you, buddy. Bye, everybody.